You're listening to Journey for Truth with internationally known medium, Tai Yi practitioner, and radio host Tammy Urbanic.
Hello and welcome to Journey for Truth on iHeartRadio and YouTube. I'm Tammy Urbanic. Thank you so much for joining me. Journey for Truth Radio is always on demand and with many new episodes. Go to journeyfortruthradio.com and there you can sign up for the free newsletter, being notified of the new episodes and also see the new episodes on that website as well. And jonalifeinstitute.com, when you go there, you can see new information on the Denver seminar, or the Denver Jonah Intensive. It's taking place at the end of September 2016. It's titled Soul Agreements and Soul Contracts. It is going to be fascinating, again, at the very end of September. So go to jonalifeinstitute.com to read more about that and to sign up for that intensive. On my website, you will see a life energy flow Tai Yi treatment titled Abort Chi. This particular treatment is for women who have had an abortion or a miscarriage. When either of those occur, there is an imbalance that is created within the emotional body, and that particular treatment can help restore that balance. Life Energy Flow Tai Yi, and on my website, empowermentthroughhealing.org. My guest this week is John DeGarmo. John is a motivational speaker on the topic of human trafficking, foster care, and parenting. He's spoken on many radio and television programs, and we're very glad he's here on Journey for Truth. John, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me in the program.
It's great to have you. How did you become interested in foster care, parenting, and human trafficking?
Well, it goes back about 19 years ago. Death of my first child. My first child died of a condition called anencephaly, or anencephaly, as some pronounce it. It's a condition where the brain or skull never forms. And my wife, who's from Australia, we were living in Australia at the time, she really grieved in a healthy fashion. I did not. I just immersed myself in work, tried to deny my feelings. You know, men don't cry, that type of thing.
Right.
It wasn't until years later that we moved back to America, had 3 healthy children, and I was able to really resolve that grief. And then I started recognizing around me, in my job at the time, I was teaching at a high school level, that many of the children I was working with had many behavioral problems, had academic problems, learning disabilities, and I kept asking myself, why is this? And I met many of their birth parents, and I realized, yes, it starts in the home. So I went to my wife and said, hey, we've lost our first child, how can we help others? So that led to foster parenting, that led to the doctorate, that led to several books, and et cetera, et cetera. So now I've devoted my entire life to helping children in foster care.
I completely understand that. I used to be a school teacher. I used to work in middle school and high school, and I worked with a lot of kids who had a troubling past. They had difficulty within their behavior. They had difficulty connecting with adults. They had difficulty trusting people. And you would see a lot of acting out in the classroom as a result of that. And I completely agree. A lot of it begins in the home, or, you know, if not all of it, begins in the home. And kids need a lot of loving care. They need a lot of direction. They really need to know that someone cares. And so that's why I was so intrigued by your information as it relates to foster care, because we do have a lot of kids in foster care. So that's where we're going to begin. What are some of the gaps that you see in the foster care system?
Well, you know, you said a lot of kids. On any given day in America, there are 450,000 children in the foster care system. And that's an incredibly large number. And, you know, before I was a foster parent, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I had my misconceptions. And I really didn't realize how grave the problem is. So one of my missions, I believe, is to try to get that information to the general public, to dispel those misconceptions and to bring awareness and advocacy. So some of the problems, you know, I think what also people don't appreciate is the fact that when these children transition out of foster care, or when they age out, they face a whole host of problems. 55% of youth in foster care today, when they leave the system, will quit school. 65% of them will end up homeless. 75% of them will end up in jail, and the system just repeats itself.
That's amazing.
5 nights ago, my wife and I took into our home a 17-year-old boy who's homeless, who spent 5 nights in jail simply because he had no place to go.
That is a very large number. I have heard that number before in terms of how many kids are in the foster care system, and then also how to assist kids who are aging out of the foster care system. I didn't realize those numbers were so high. And I can imagine that many of those kids might contemplate suicide as a result of really feeling like there's nowhere to go and no one cares.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. 2 of the 3 that I've adopted from foster care are third generation foster care, which means their parents were in foster care and their grandparents were in foster care, and the system just repeats itself. But yes, suicide is very real for those who age out of the foster care system. There's no place for them to go. Can you imagine when our own children are 18 years of age, or our parents, if they just thrust us out of the house when we're 18 and said, don't call us when you're sick, don't call us to help you, don't call us at Christmas, we're not going to call you on your birthday. These kids have no place to go, no one to call upon, and that's why the statistics are so very grim.
That is very troubling, very troubling. What is the reality of kids being abused and neglected within foster homes?
Sadly, there's a bad apple in every single barrel in life. I don't think we can deny that at all. In every walk of life, there are some bad eggs. Well, there are bad apples in the foster care system, too. There are those bad foster parents who paint a negative picture for all of it. I have found that as I travel across the country, whether it's from Alaska to Florida, from California to New York and all in between, that the vast majority of foster parents are incredible people who simply want to help children in need. So those bad eggs, those bad examples, those bad foster parents, they paint a negative picture for all. Is there abuse in the system? Sure, there is, but that number is so very small. Yet the media will focus on those numbers.
Interesting. Now, when you have a family who truly does want to assist a foster child, right, and that child will then age out, or at that point a teenager will age out, why don't then those families opt to keep that foster child in the home and figure out some sort of arrangement? Maybe that teenager finds a part-time job, something along those lines.
That does happen. It happens. Unfortunately, it happens very rarely. Many of these children, when they reach the age of 18 or the age of 21, depends upon the state, for many of them, they want to leave because they don't want to be a label as a foster child. That's a stigma that they want to escape. For so many of them, if they bounce from home to home to home, the system has failed them, and they think, I can do this on my own. When I don't know about you, but when I was 18 years of age, I thought I knew it all. I thought I could conquer the world.
I did.
Right. These kids think the same thing. On top of that, they want to escape that foster care label, so they voluntarily rush out of there and think they can do it on their own. Mm-hmm. They don't have the resources. They don't have the education. They don't have the stability to do it, though.
I do understand that, and I do remember being 18. I remember how I felt, and I say that in jest that, I knew everything. Of course, I didn't really know anything. But, when you're 18, you really do. You want that independence, that sense of independence. And I do hope that there are foster families out there who can figure out an arrangement to help those youth who might end up in homeless shelters, who might end up at other shelters at risk of being homeless. Because there are many youth out there who can really shine and express their abilities and express their individuality if they have that assistance.
I want to tell you about one who was with us. She came to us when she was 17 years of age. 3 families. Well, first of all, her family was killed in Romania, and she was adopted in America. 3 families adopted her. All 3 families abused her, whether it was sexually, emotionally, or mentally, and all 3 families gave her back. They unadopted her. By the time she reached our house when she was 17 years of age, she wanted nothing to do with unconditional love. She wanted nothing to do with adoption. She wanted nothing to do with foster care system. All 3 of those had betrayed her in some fashion. In fact, we actually tried to adopt her, and she sabotaged the adoption process. To her, adoption meant rape. She's now 25 years of age. She calls my wife and I grandpa and grandma because she just had a baby. She works for child welfare. She's a tremendous success story. She is that way because we remained a consistent factor in her life. We never gave up on her. We helped her get to college. We helped her find an apartment. So yeah, there's many foster parents who are doing just that.
That is wonderful to hear. I'm very, very glad that you shared that story. What does a caseload look like, if you can answer this question, for a caseworker? Or in other words, are there just so many kids, and you gave a huge number, the caseworkers cannot manage to follow up on all of this?
We live in a society where budgets are being slashed in every direction. And this is government. So the government does not have the resources. A caseworker today, sadly, is overworked, overwhelmed, underpaid, and under-resourced. Yeah, they've got too much on their plate. Sadly, sometimes the children slip through the cracks, whether it's through the foster parents, whether it's through the schools, whether it's through the government, the caseworkers, the court systems, whatever it may be. But yeah, sure, a caseworker is overwhelmed today because they don't have enough resources, they don't have enough time. Yeah, absolutely. My wife and I have had up to 11 children in our house at one time. The limit in most states is 6. But we've taken up to 11 because there's no homes for these kids. We just keep signing waiver after waiver after waiver because there's no place for these kids to go.
And I know that the media does tend to focus on caseworkers who neglected to check up on a child who was being abused, who was murdered. And I know, as you stated earlier, there in every industry there's going to be a group of employees, a group of people who are not following through, who are legitimately not proficient in their work. But there are those cases where caseworkers need help. Their caseloads are too large. They need the resources, they need the money, and they need to be paid for the work that they're doing appropriately. Right.
It is an incredibly difficult job. Everybody's mad at you. The birth parents are mad at you. Mm-hmm. The foster child is mad at you. Sometimes the foster parents are mad at you. The court system may be mad at you. You're never going to win in that type of job. For a new caseworker who's entering the job profession today, their career expectancy is about 1.5 years before they hit that burnout stage. And let me tell you, it is long hours with little pay. I don't know how they do it. It's amazing.
And let's talk about human trafficking. This is also something that you talk about and that you've studied. A lot of people have heard the term human trafficking. Sometimes people hear the term modern day slavery. It's the same thing, essentially. So what is the reality of human trafficking, specifically in the United States?
It's huge. It is a secret, dark secret that America refuses to acknowledge, refuses to accept. There are thousands of children being trafficked as we speak right now through the child sex trafficking market. I live an hour from Atlanta. Atlanta is a major hub of child sex trafficking. Do you know when the biggest week of child sex trafficking is in the United States?
The football game at the end of the year.
Right? Yeah, I can tell you're a big sports fan. The week of the Super Bowl. Absolutely.
Thank you.
The week of the Super Bowl. And wherever that location is, that's where children are being shipped in from across the country and across the world for child sex trafficking, because the entertainers, the athletes, all those people come in there with all that money. Year after year, hundreds of children are being rescued from that child sex trafficking market. A vast majority of them are children from foster care.
I have heard this as well, and I know that anyone who goes to the FBI's website can read some information on human trafficking, and there's a lot of information out there on human trafficking. But a lot of people might say, I've never seen it, or it's not in my community. And I think that both of those would be incorrect answers. I think it's probably, to a degree, in most communities across the United States. And then I've heard also some people say, that happens in other countries. It's not happening here in the United States. But as you're stating, it's huge. It's a huge moneymaker.
Second biggest moneymaker globally. Second biggest moneymaker globally. Again, we refuse to acknowledge it because it's ugly. It's horrific. It's heinous. It happens all the time. And it happens more and more and more through online means. People just They meet and they exchange children through online means. Now, children in foster care are particularly susceptible to child sex trafficking because of the online. A child in foster care has no control over any aspect of their life, where they're placed, being taken away from mom or dad, how long they're in foster care, whatever it may be. So they go online believing that's where they have control. So they go online looking for that one thing that they want, and that is for someone to love them, And there are child sex traffickers who are monitoring the internet, waiting for these very, very vulnerable children, and then lure them in with false promises and false hopes and false identities.
What about kids who have run away?
Yep, same thing. Absolutely right. These children who run away, when they run away to the city, usually within the first 30, if they're not, usually within 36 hours, somebody has approached them about child sex trafficking. These children are scared. They're vulnerable. They're looking for acceptance. They're looking for someone to take care of them. And they have no money. So someone offers them, hey, you do a quick trick for me and I'll give you $100. And they lure them in that way. And there are also those teenage children who are trained to lure other children in as well.
That is very scary. And how would people recognize this? Just, your average person who goes to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, how would they recognize whether children are being trafficked or whether there is a trafficking ring?
Well, they're very curious. They can actually go online and look. They can find it online if they want. They can see if the child, if they suspect a child is they're going through depression, sudden mood swings, physical marks on their body, physical abuse, a feeling of fear within that child. Those are just some of the symptoms. There are many, many symptoms that one can look for to see if a child is being sex trafficked.
So when I think of human trafficking, I think of a person being taken, let's say kidnapped, for lack of a better word, and taken to another location and being forced to perform certain tasks of sexual nature most of the time. But are there situations where a teenager or a kid is being trafficked, but they get to go back home? So that there's back and forth.
I have read of instances where children are being trafficked by their own family members. I have actually had that as a foster parent, who have had children come into my home and stay with me because their parents were trafficking them for sex, using those children for sex. So that does happen, sure.
So in that case, it is what you were just stating, looking for children who are abused, who have markings on their body that perhaps someone in the home is trafficking them.
Correct. Sudden mood swings. They may be wearing, they're wearing heavy clothing in a hot summertime to cover up their abuses, whatever it may be. Sure.
Now, you spoke of social media earlier, or being online. What can parents and kids know in order to avoid getting caught up in human trafficking?
Parents need to realize this, first of all. They're not their friends. They are their parents. I am not the friend of my 16-year-old boy. I am his father. I am his parent. I want to be his best friend when he's 21, 22, 23 years of age. But while he's living in my home and as a child, I am going to monitor this. I'm going to monitor his online devices, whether it's his phone, whether it's his computer, his laptop. I'm going to monitor those things on a consistent basis, not necessarily because I don't trust him, but to ensure that nobody is contacting him, nobody's reaching out to him, nobody's giving him false promises. So parents need to begin doing that. They need to be monitoring their children's devices. Some people tell me, well, I'm invading their privacy. No, forget that. You are protecting your child, because there are people out there who want to take your child and use them for heinous reasons. Another thing parents need to teach their children is, particularly if they're older, about sexting, which is very, very common. Sexting, the sending of sexually suggestive messages or pictures of a child, naked picture of a child. I have heard and talked with far too many youth who are 18 years of age or older who have been sending sex messages of their 16-year-old girlfriend, and then when these 18-year-old boys are caught, they now become registered sexual predators. And parents have no idea about that.
And really educating your kids about being savvy online, really being able to notice when a 45-year-old man is posing himself as a 17-year-old boy, and trying to pull you out of your comfort zone, pull you out of your safety zone in order to end up taking you. There are a lot of those stories coming out now because social media is huge. Right.
And my book, Keeping Foster Children Safe Online, I write about a story about 7-year-old girl who was in the bedroom of her foster mother while the mother was doing laundry, and the computer came on, and a sexual predator reached out through Skype to the 7-year-old girl and asked the girl to take the girl's shirt off, and the girl did, and the foster mother walked into the room, and the girl's shirt was off, and the mother said, "Why are you doing that?" And she pointed to the computer and said, "Because that man asked me to." A perfect stranger randomly reached out to this girl through Skype, through a computer, and asked the girl to take her shirt off. This very, very vulnerable girl, who's only 7 years of age, said, "Yes, I'll do it."
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Did she call the police? Was she able to?
Right. The foster mother was able to call the police, but they couldn't track the guy.
Amazing, amazing. Now, where can people find more about your work and your book?
Oh, thank you for asking. If you just Google Dr. John DeGarmo foster care, you'll find all my books, you'll find my resources, my videos, you'll find our appearance on Good Morning America. You'll see all those resources. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. I want to mention this. Foster parenting is the hardest thing I've ever done. It can be exhausting. It's at the same time it's the most rewarding thing I've done. Mm-hmm. But I really understand that not everybody can be a foster parent. But everybody can help in some way, and there's so many ways people can help these children, the foster parents, the birth parents, without becoming a foster parents. And that information is on my website as well. There's, as I said earlier, 450,000 children in care, not enough people. This is our next great mission field right here.
That is excellent. I know there are a lot of adults out there who really want to make a difference and want to assist children. And so going to your website and looking at the steps that they can take if they want to begin that process of becoming a foster parent, excellent idea. And there are just so many kids out there who need a loving home, who need that guidance, who need to know that someone really cares about them, because you just don't know how many suicides you're preventing by teaching kids that they're worth something.
Right. There are children right now, as you and I speak, who have never had a positive statement made to them by an adult. These children just need someone to care for them and someone to say, I care for you and I love you. Sadly, so many kids don't get those words.
Well, thank you so much, John, for being a guest on my show this week.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you, listeners, for joining me here as well on Journey for Truth on iHeartRadio and YouTube. Until next time, have a fantastic week. All right.